Local councillors run our lives, yet most of us don't even know the name of our local councillor. Today, that changes. Britain's sexiest politician joins me in the studio. I'm Kaylem Shepherd, and this is The Memo. Carl, thank you very much for joining us on The Memo. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Let's start at the beginning. Born and raised in Liverpool. Tell me about it. What was it like?
Yeah, so I was, for anyone who watches this and you say that I was born and raised in Liverpool, they'd have a little bit of a go because I was raised just outside in a little town called Prescott. Yeah, so in like Merseyside folklore, I would be called probably a plastic Scouser, but I very much consider myself a Scouser.
Yeah.
So I was raised by my nan and granddad on a council estate.
Yeah.
So lived in a council house. I wouldn't change that upbringing for anything. Like I love my nan and granddad dearly. They gave me the morals that I've got to this day, and the fact that I grew up in a council house and grew up probably without a silver spoon gave me a bit more of appreciation for the better things in life.
What was the moment you realised that politics is for you? I mean, you started quite young.
Yeah, well, there wasn't really a moment where I thought like I want to go into politics. I suppose when I was 18, I watched the general election debates, and at the time, kind of through watching it, I thought, you know, the Liberals are the ones who were speaking to me. Yeah. Read the manifesto like an absolute nerd, and I just
what stood out for you?
It was the policies on. So it was about listening to people about stuff to do with the environment, like kind of spoke to me at the time as a young person, but it was the Constitution and the preamble that like really spoke to me. So the Lib Dem preamble says something like nobody should be enslaved by poverty, ignorance or conformity. And I think those three things really speak to me because not everyone should have like a decent upbringing and a decent living. That's poverty. Everyone should have the opportunity to learn and to prosper and have opportunity. And for me, that's ignorance. And then in terms of conformity, everyone should feel like they're empowered as a citizen. And for me, liberalism is about giving power down to the lowest possible level so that they can make decisions about their lives.
But wouldn't the Labour Party argue that that's what they do?
No, well, they might argue that, but I would say that certainly isn't the case. In my experience of the Labour Party, particularly in Merseyside, is one of control, one of not liking the challenge of different political parties or political views, and one where they ignore like the vast majority of the public. So, you know, there's consultations that have happened in areas where I've lived. For example, there was one recently about the car parking in the city centre. 95.
I was going to get you on that.
Yeah.
Traffic as well.
95% of businesses in the city centre said that they didn't want this new car parking scheme, and the council ignored them. So in my experience, the Labour Party don't like giving people power. They like keeping power to themselves.
You're obviously going to run to be the leader of Liverpool City Council. I think the Lib Dems are at, what, 61 seats at the moment. Labour at 61 seats, Lib Dems at 14. Do you think you're realistically going to win this election when you're, let's be honest, quite far behind?
Yeah. 100%. And I can give you that as a one-word answer, but I'm more than happy to dive further into that. So at the moment, what we're seeing in Liverpool is a systematic dismantling of the old way of thinking about the Labour Party, because people understand that that isn't the Labour Party anymore, particularly under Keir Starmer. There's certain people that they've got respect for, but they've looked at what the Labour Party stands for in this day and age, and it's not what the people of Liverpool stand for. And when we go and knock on doors with our message, which is about, you know, cleaning up the city, making sure residents have a say, and actually providing decent housing and council housing again for people, people are responsive to that. So when we're knocking, and this is the God's honest truth, we're getting Lib Dems first, we're getting reform behind us and scarily close behind. But Labour are nowhere to be seen. Yeah. And the people of Liverpool have got a track record, Kaylem, of, you know, when Labour are in government or whoever's in government, they want to give them a good kicking, because Liverpool doesn't like to do things the conventional way. And I'm sure that they'll do the same again. We've just got to make sure that we're the people that pick up the pieces, and it certainly shouldn't be reform.
I was going to say, are you scared about reform's rise within Liverpool?
I'm concerned about what it could mean for some of the more working class areas. So Liverpool...
But they say they are for the working class. The Lib Dems have been there for a lifetime. So have the Tories, so have the Labour Party. Reform is this new shiny thing that is actually going to benefit, the mum at home with the kid.
Yeah. So I think that's the danger. And I've got a good example of a conversation I had with someone in Liverpool about this. So I spoke to someone in Croxteth, so knocking on doors. We got a decent response, but there was this one guy that stuck out to me, and he said, "I'm voting Reform." And I said, "All right, okay, it's fine, but can I just ask why?" And he said, "Because none of you have done anything for the working class." And I said, "Okay, but do you really think Nigel Farage stands up for the working class?" And he said, "No, I don't like Nigel Farage, but I want to give a big, like, two fingers up to the rest of the political establishment."
Yeah.
And I get that. And I think the worst thing about politics now is the sneering from, like, the centre to the centre left about people who are voting for Reform for that reason. And actually what people want to see is a recognition of why they're so upset and to do something about it. And unfortunately, like, the left aren't doing that at the moment, and they need to we need, I should say, to get our act together and start doing something about it.
So why should someone vote for you in Liverpool to represent them?
Because of my background, I genuinely understand and care what some of the poorest people in the city have been through. And I know, I mean, there's an old saying in Liverpool that there's just some kids that just grow up with the nans. I don't know if you know the comedian Adam Rowe, but he says it, and I'm one of those kids. So, like, I've been there, I've done it. And I just think there's no one in the city, or no one really in politics at the moment, that are speaking for those types of people. So I think it's about, one, putting power back in those people's hands, two, giving them hope for the future, and three, actually saying the status quo can't go on the way it's going on. And for me, that means doing things differently, like building council housing, because to be honest, Kaylem, we've got a situation at the moment where people's housing is absolutely dire. It's I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
No, of course you can.
It's incredibly shit, like, honestly, and some of the stories you hear are so upsetting. And just for me, it's about giving those people a bit of hope.
Do you think you're the hope when it comes to the Lib Dem party? Because some would argue that the Lib Dems are nowhere to be seen. Ed Davies jumping off, cliffs and stuff. Are you the new iteration of the Lib Dems?
I don't know. I mean, if the Lib Dems want me to be that, I'm more than happy to be the person that kind of gets in the trenches and has the fight.
I mean, here's a perfect story. I was out a few nights ago and I was telling my friends that you were coming on the podcast, and he said, "I know this guy, I've seen him on TikTok." And I said, "Do you know Ed Davey?" And I said, "Who's that?" There's a perfect example.
All right, okay. So maybe
it's just because you're shirtless half the time. But I mean, does that play into your kind of, your persona, your kind of image, shall I say? Because obviously you have an image.
Yeah, no, it does, mate. And what I would say is probably there's not a lot of people that would want to see Ed Davey shirtless. I mean, he was showing a little bit when he had the wetsuit on, wasn't he? But I understand, like, what people see and what people feel when they see, like, social media and my social media. I suppose I see it as a benefit, because if I can use that platform to spread a positive and a good message, then that's a good thing. And if there's people that know me for that reason, then that's a really good thing, in my opinion. And look, I'm more than happy to be recognised, probably more so by the gay community than anyone else, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, you won an award recently as well.
Yeah.
Was it Ally of the Year?
Ally of the Year, mate, yeah.
What makes you an Ally of the Year?
Do you know what? It's just kind of, it's just sticking up for people who have been through the ringer. And I did a crazy interview with Tiara Sky, who's a trans drag queen, who's just full of energy and brilliant. But I just think at the moment people just want someone who can do the bare minimum of standing there and not breaking down when it comes to defending these fundamental rights, like trans rights, gay rights, ethnic minority rights. It's sad that we live in a world at the moment that, like, people find it difficult to do that. And I just suppose for me, I don't know whether it's because of my friends or my background or whatever, I've never found it difficult to do that. I also like causing trouble as well, so that's probably a little bit of it. And I don't mind a little
cause some trouble on the
fight.
podcast today. Let's get some lines out. Okay, let's go back to serious politics. There was a poll done by YouGov, and it said that 31% of Brits wouldn't vote for the Lib Dems because they don't know what they stand for. What does the Lib Dems stand for when you've got Reform and you've got Conservatives and you've got the Labour Party? Yeah. Why do you need to be a party?
It's a good question, and I suppose I was interestingly speaking to someone about this just before, like, because the girl I was speaking to was American, and she was saying in the UK it's very peculiar, the system, because in the US you've got the Democrats and the Republicans, and then there's loads of different kind of factions within that, whereas it's a bit more like split into political parties in this country, isn't it? I would say we need the Liberal Democrats because there's no other fundamentally liberal party. And what I mean by that is a party that actually believes that local people and local communities make decisions better than anyone else, better than any government, better than any business. That's why we believe in things like cooperatives and mutuals, because people run them. And I think in politics at the moment, and I think Zach Polanski is a good example of this. And I think Mamdani is a good example of this as well. If you've got something to say, it's clear when you believe in it yourself. And if you can put that concisely and you can communicate it in the right way, people follow. And I just don't think at the moment, I think Liberals have a problem with that because we try and be too sophisticated at times. I don't count myself in that category because I try and communicate things as simply and as honestly as I possibly can. But Liberals do have that problem. And I made this example. So, Mamdani talks about like taxing the wealthy, and that's a very kind of easy thing to get your head around. When you want to dive into a very complex policy, it's not. But I said there's Lib Dem policies that people don't know about that you can explain quite easily, such as a super tax on private jet flights, such as a sewage tax on water companies because they've been paying the CEOs like millions of pounds, and such as a proper windfall tax. And I said the way that we need to do this is we need to start telling stories.
Hey everybody, I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please just take a second to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure it's available on your podcast app. That can be Spotify, it can be Apple. The Memo with me, Kaylem Shepherd, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for watching.
So let's take someone called Robin, for example, who's got 2 young kids and lives in a flat that she barely affords to pay, and her gas bill is going to go up significantly. What's just happened, a water bill has just gone up significantly, let's say, and what's just happened is the water companies have just given their shareholders millions of pounds in profit. Why is it right that those shareholders get those millions of pounds while Robin is struggling to make ends meet for her kids? Because her kids deserve not just to survive, but to thrive. And that for me is the story that we need to start telling. We need to start telling stories about Robin and her kids, and why a sewage tax, for example, would be something we should bring in this day and age so that we can actually solve those societal problems and provide social justice.
Are you going to tell all of that to Ed Davey?
Yeah, I'll try to. Maybe you give me some time. I really like Ed. I think he's a really decent person. He's a Liverpool fan as well, by the way. I don't know whether he'd thank me for telling people that, but I won an abseil down Anfield with him. So like that's what I'm going to try and get him to do. But yeah, I one of the things that I don't mind being is a little bit of a thorn in the side, and making sure that the party knows what people like us think on a daily basis, particularly younger people who are a little bit fed up with politics and want a little bit of hope.
Do you think the Lib Dems were tarnished by the coalition?
Yeah, 100%. Like we were tarnished, and in some ways rightfully so. You weren't always going to get everything right in coalition. And I think the big mistake that we made was trusting the Tories. Like, never trust the Tories, what I've always been told.
Never kiss a Tory, that's
I
what they say.
never kiss a Tory. I'm sure that's on the Labour t-shirt. I don't think I have, actually, no. I'll watch a Tory, I'll come in my DMs. The Tory be in my DMs now being like, you kiss me. No, I don't think I've ever kissed a Tory. But I think in coalition, looking back now, some of the decisions that were made, you know, such as equal marriage was fantastic, pupil premium was fantastic, but a lot of the other stuff, when you're a minor party, there's nothing you can do about it. But we should have known what the Tories were going to do. And I think hopefully now what we're seeing is the dismantling of the Conservative Party. And I'm here for it, Kaylem. Like, I literally want to get my popcorn out and I want to just watch them implode because it's great to see.
And where would they go to if they do implode?
There are some One Nation decent Conservatives in this country that want a decent functioning government and care about all areas of the country. And those types of Conservatives will probably come to the Liberal Democrats, to a more centrist Liberal Party. The other side of the Conservatives, the not so nice side, who probably, you know, are going to make a big fuss about immigration or are going to say we don't.
But immigration, you know, would you argue it's an important issue at the moment?
It is an important issue at the moment.
There was a poll put out by YouGov basically saying what's the most important issues that Brits face, and 26% of them said it was immigration and asylum seeking. What would be your response to that? Should we be worried about immigration?
I think the perspective that we should be worried about immigration from is a public service perspective. So this country's got crumbling public services and it can't handle the level of immigration that we've got. So that's the perspective that we should be worrying at it from. Like, what reform have got us worrying about is culture and about different people coming to this country who don't believe in the culture. Well, like, I've met plenty of people from the Caribbean. I've met plenty of people from the Middle East. I've met plenty of people who are Muslim, plenty of people who are Christian from Africa. And a lot of them fundamentally believe in the same values that we believe in. It's absolutely outrageous to me that there's this kind of culture war being created because, to be perfectly honest, Farage hasn't got anything else to say. And I think if we twist it and we look at it from a more public service perspective, it would mean that we'd need to bring the levels of immigration down because you just can't handle at the moment the level of immigration that we've got. But it's because simply, you know, we should be taking in people that we need for the NHS, for business, things like that. But we can't just have like an open door policy. And I think maybe this is somewhere where I'm slightly out of step with my party, but only from the perspective of I want to talk about it because I know it's an issue that people care about. And I would rather talk about it from a public service perspective than talk about it from a cultural perspective, because that allows the people who have got hate in the heart to control the narrative. And that's what I want to get away from.
We're really running over time here, but I've got a few more questions just to ask you.
It's my fault that.
No one goes into politics to be a councillor. Why are you really doing this?
Yeah. So I always remember a conversation I had with Mike Story, who was the former leader of Liverpool Council, and he's in the House of Lords now. And it was a conversation in his back garden, which is a nice backdrop for this type of conversation because it's a big back garden. And he said to me, what do you want to do in the future, Carl? And I said, I don't know, I might stand for Parliament, might become an MP one day. And he said, why would you want to become an MP when you could run a council and you could influence much more? You'd have much more control over the levers of power and you could impact people's lives much more. And I've never forgot that conversation. And to me, that is like the value of like running a council, and that's the value of being a local councillor. So I think that local government has got intrinsic value within itself. Everyone sees it as some sort of stepping stone. I don't. I think local government is massively important in itself.
Yeah. And what would your advice be to someone who wants to get into politics?
Reach out to people that you know that are involved, because I've spoken to plenty of people that don't know the route in and feel a little bit intimidated by it. And I've got to say, the Liberal Democrats given me all these life chances that I've had through politics. And it was by chance, but I just literally took the chance on joining the party and turning up to a council of surgery. Met a guy called Ian Smith, and he taught me like everything that I know about campaigning and politics and being a Liberal. And like, I'd never look back. And I absolutely love being involved in politics.
If you were Prime Minister tomorrow, what would be the one policy you would enact day one?
Right, so the policy I would enact straight away would be a mass council house building programme, because at the moment we live in a world where private landlords are allowed to get away with absolutely anything, and actually the social landlords that we've got aren't fulfilling their obligations. So mass council house building programme where we can properly house people in good, decent homes again.
Yeah. Carl, thank you so much for coming on the Memo. Really
Nice one,
appreciate
mate.
it. I just want to ask one more question. If you win, can the Memo come up and see what it's like to be a victorious winner?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Like,
Yeah.
I'll roll out the red carpet for you.
Well, best of luck. Best of luck. Thank
Nice
you very
one,
much for coming on
mate.
the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey everybody, I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please just take a second to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure it's available on your podcast app. That can be Spotify, it can be Apple. The Memo with me, Kaylem Shepherd, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for watching.